Do you think nationwide injunctions are being abused?
Certainly, Senator. I think that is
They're
borne
being
out.
abused by both sides, aren't they?
Yes, Senator.
Both Republicans and Democrats are forum shopping, aren't they?
Certainly.
In a dramatic Senate hearing, John Kennedy delivered a fiery and deeply personal rebuke to a legal witness, turning what began as a technical discussion about court orders into a broader debate about respect for the judiciary and political bias in legal scholarship. If you're finding this breakdown helpful so far, make sure you stay through to the end, because the context behind this clash reveals far more than the headline moment.
Would any of you advise a client to defy a federal court order?
No.
None of you would? How about you, Professor?
I mean, under most circumstances, we follow the government and private parties follow court orders. I suppose it's not, I would not rule out ever the possibility that in a sufficiently egregious order, there should be some consideration of whether there's a way.
So in some cases,
I think it's a qualified answer,
in
yes.
some cases you would.
In an extremely narrow band of cases, I think it would be considered, yes.
Okay. Do any of you think that nationwide or universal injunctions are not being abused?
I'm not sure what if I may, Senator, I'm not sure what the time horizon of the question is. I don't think that there could be good faith disagreements about the correctness of some of them, but I have not seen in the last 4 months
Professor, you're
abuse.
smart,
No.
and I've read your stuff, and I've read your writings. And I don't want to get bogged down with this, but I have little respect for your opinion because I've read your stuff. When someone is in the White House that you agree with, and someone gets a universal injunction against him, you don't like universal injunctions. You called them judges acting like they're politicians in robes and judges looking like crass political actors. But now that President Trump's in the White House, who you dislike, you think that universal injunctions taste like pumpkin pie. So I have to discount what you say because I think you act on your political beliefs. And I worry that that's what you're teaching your kids. So I'll leave you out of that. Do you think nationwide injunctions are being abused?
Certainly, Senator. I think that is
They're
borne
being
out.
abused by both sides, aren't they?
Yes, Senator.
Both Republicans and Democrats are forum shopping, aren't they?
Certainly.
Professor, do you disagree with that?
I think both sides are abusing them. I agree.
Okay. Both sides.
Yeah.
There are no clean hands here. Now, your suggestion is that when a federal judge issues a nationwide injunction, there should be an automatic stay and an expedited right of appeal. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Do you disagree with that?
I haven't given enough thought to have a position on it, Senator.
I suspect, Professor, your answer will be it depends on who's president.
No, Senator.
Let me ask you about this. What if we had a rule? I was reading an article the other day. I'm not suggesting it. I just want your opinions. That said, if a president, any president, issues an executive order, let's say, that clearly violates settled Supreme Court precedent, that a federal judge can't issue a nationwide injunction. For example, if a federal a president issued an order that said no one in America has right to counsel any longer, including but not limited to, in a felony case, having the government pay for your lawyer if you can't afford it. That clearly violates settled Gideon v. Wainwright. In that case, a judge has no authority or does have authority to issue a nationwide injunction. But in a case where the law is unclear, a judge should refrain from that. Now, obviously, we'd have to trust our judges, but we're supposed to be able to trust them anyway. What do you think about that?
I don't agree with that, Senator, because I think universal injunctions transgress the limitations under Article 3, even if the underlying merits are clear.
I happen to agree with you. I don't think there's any basis under Article 3, under Supreme Court precedent, under the English common law for nationwide injunctions. I think politicians have helped judges, and many judges are politicians, to just make it up. And many of them are like Professor Shaw here. If they like the president, they're against nationwide injunctions. If they don't like the president, they're for him. Professor, let me ask you this while I have you. On April 22nd, 2024, you said there are some members of the Supreme Court that are evil. Which justices were you talking about?
I'll take it your word, Senator. I don't recall using that word, but
All right, here's what you said. You were talking about the majority opinion in Muldrow v. City of St. Louis. You said, quote, Justice Kagan, will she be able to control the opinion's future distortion by her evil colleagues? Probably not, end quote. Who were you talking about?
sir, I'm very skeptical. If it's a transcription, it was probably a transcription error. I do not think I said.
No, you said it. Why don't you own up to it? Which you call some of the members of the Supreme Court evil. Now, which ones do you think are evil?
I would have to refresh my recollection. I've been very critical
You're
of some
embarrassed
members of the
that
Supreme
you made
Court.
that statement, aren't you?
I'm
You're an
Senator,
officer
it
of
doesn't
the
sound
court.
like something that
You know
I
what
would
I'm
say.
embarrassed at? That you're teaching our kids.
I don't refer to Supreme Court justices as evil in
did,
the
right here,
in the classroom,
on
sir.
your podcast, April 22nd, 2024.
Okay, well,
Big as Dallas. And you're an officer of the court, and you're here advising us to be respectful to federal judges, and you say they're evil members of the United States Supreme Court? Gag me with a spoon. You're part of what's the problem in all of this.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Senator Durbin.
So I'm going to give the panel members an opportunity to.
The exchange opened with a fundamental legal question, whether a lawyer should ever advise a client to defy a federal court order. The initial responses were predictable. Most panelists said no, reinforcing the principle that court orders must generally be followed to preserve the rule of law. But one professor introduced nuance, suggesting that in extremely rare and egregious circumstances, there might be room for reconsideration. That subtle qualification became the first spark. If you've ever wondered where the line is between legal obedience and moral resistance, this is where the debate begins, so keep watching. Kennedy quickly seized on that ambiguity, pressing the witness and framing the response as dangerous. His line of questioning reflects a long-standing tension in constitutional law, the balance between strict adherence to judicial authority and the possibility that courts themselves can err. Historically, there have been moments where court decisions were later overturned or widely criticized, but the system depends on compliance first and challenge through appeals, not defiance. If you're learning something new about how the legal system actually works, drop a like and keep following. The discussion then shifted to nationwide injunctions, a powerful legal tool where a single federal judge can block a policy across the entire country. Critics argue these injunctions are overused and politically motivated, while supporters say they are necessary to prevent widespread harm. Kennedy accused both political parties of forum shopping, essentially seeking out judges likely to rule in their favor. Even the witnesses agreed, acknowledging that neither side has clean hands. This moment is key because it shows rare bipartisan agreement on a controversial issue, so stay with us as it escalates further. But the real turning point came when Kennedy pivoted from legal theory to personal credibility. He accused the professor of inconsistency, suggesting that their views on injunctions changed depending on who held presidential power, including references to Donald Trump. This is a common critique in legal and political debates, that principles are applied selectively based on political alignment. Whether fair or not, it underscores a growing distrust in institutions that are supposed to remain neutral. If you've noticed this trend in broader politics, you're not alone, so keep watching for how it plays out here. Then came the most explosive moment. Kennedy confronted the witness over a past statement allegedly referring to some Supreme Court justices as evil. The professor hesitated, questioned the accuracy of the quote, and struggled to respond definitively. Kennedy, however, doubled down, reading the statement aloud and demanding accountability. This wasn't just about a word, it was about the perceived erosion of respect for the highest court in the land, including figures like Alana Kagan and her colleagues. If you're still watching, this is where the emotional stakes peak. From a broader perspective, this moment highlights a critical issue in modern discourse, the line between strong criticism and inflammatory rhetoric. Legal scholars often critique court decisions sharply, but labeling justices in moral terms crosses into more controversial territory. Kennedy's reaction reflects a belief that such language undermines public trust in the judiciary, while others argue that robust criticism is part of academic freedom. This tension is central to understanding the clash, so stay engaged as we unpack its implications. The hearing ultimately reveals deeper concerns about the politicization of law. When legal arguments are seen as extensions of political identity, it becomes harder for the public to distinguish between principled reasoning and partisan positioning. Kennedy's closing remarks made it clear he sees this as a systemic problem, not just an individual misstep. If you're interested in how this affects future court decisions and public confidence, make sure you follow for more analysis. In the end, what we witnessed was more than a heated exchange. It was a window into the challenges facing modern democracy. The rule of law depends not only on rules and institutions, but on mutual respect and trust among those who interpret and enforce them. When that trust erodes, even a single word can ignite a national debate. If this breakdown helped you understand the bigger picture, share your thoughts below and let us know where you stand on this issue.